Ladies and gentlemen, support for this podcast is brought to you by Market Squawk, which powers livesquawk.co.uk for all of your on-demand data needs. Pay as you go, any asset class, low latency. Listen, when you're trading, punting crypto, punting FX, Market Squawk will give you all the information you need whenever you need it. Our second sponsor of the night is xbrain.co.uk. Enter promo code Fighting Words to save 30% on checkout on all Xbrain products. xbrain.co.uk, the Viking boys. We are delighted, and this may shock him as we start, because this man is our first MMA guest. And much like we did with our first boxing guest, we've gone quite big. And we have the outlaw, Dan Hardy.
Thanks for joining us, champ.
Good talking
Mr.
to you
Hardy.
guys.
Let me just say very quickly, I am, and even in your early UFC days, I was a massive fan of you, to the point I had the Wolfgum Shield. I was going balls deep in Cherry Active, right? I'm not sure what that stuff did, but I was in. I was
delicious.
like, Dan,
I know that.
Dan's doing it, I'm in. Like, it was the future for me. Guys, again, thank you so much for doing this. Like, philosopher, warrior, commentator, analyst, podcaster, like, what, coach? What are you not doing these days? Like, you're doing a lot.
Sleeping. I'm not sleeping much.
You're not sleeping, no.
Yeah. No, there's loads of stuff going on. To be honest, everything supports one another, and I'm involved in everything with friends. So it's, it makes life a lot easier. It never feels like a day at work, that's for sure.
It never does. And, I mean, to be fair, it's one of the reasons we started this. It was like a lockdown, out of lockdown. What are we going to do? Have a little chat about stuff we like. And here he is with the outlaw. So how is like post-fight, post UFC, like, are you super into your coaching? I saw something on Ariel Hawani that you're talking about fighting again, and in this era now, we've got Lethway, we've got BKFC, we've got BKB, we've got relevant MMA outlets of many sources. What are you fancying?
I've got a bunch of things going on. I mean, you got me?
Yeah.
I've got loads of guys training and fighting at the moment, and that's keeping me busy. It's between the gym and the YouTube channel and the clothing and all the other stuff that's going on. I'm enjoying finding a bit of like a home routine, to be honest. I spent the last 10 years, well, 20 years really, if you consider my fighting career as well, on the road, traveling from one place to the next, and not really exactly sure where I was going to be settling for the next 6 months. So, to be back home, working consistently for Cage Warriors and doing my BT Sport breakdowns. And as you boys know, combat sports is blowing up right now. It's never been bigger than what it is. And there's so many things going on with the styles that you've mentioned with the BKFC and the Lethway. And then you've got, one championship doing some really interesting stuff. PFL coming over to the UK. Bellator, I've got a good thing going with BBC. So I'm kind of not sure where I'm going to land next, to be honest, but I've got a few options on the table. But more than anything, I'm enjoying being back in the gym with the guys. I've got 5 amateurs fighting at the start of March. Then I've got 2 of my pros fighting a couple of weeks after that. It's nice to have guys in training camp and to see them improving on a weekly basis. That's what's really making me thrive at the moment.
As a fighter that was maybe third wave of MMA, like, you wasn't like Raw wearing one boxing glove and one boot.
No,
but you wasn't. Yeah, I'd say
civilized when I
three or wave 3, wave 4.
I'd say so. Yeah.
How different is the coaching for you, like, that you're bestowing upon your disciples compared to what you have? Because I would imagine it was very PC when you even when you were going. Like, it must have been all over the place, and here wasn't that, it wasn't that great for grappling. It's striking with, it's a striking nation. But yeah,
it was very disjointed. I often think about what the guys have got now. I mean, we've got a cage in the gym, and we didn't even have a cage to train in most of the time. And I'd spend the morning with my Thai boxing coach, and then I'd drive to a different city to get some grappling training. And the worst thing was none of the coaches were speaking to one another. So, not that they weren't getting on, but they just never crossed paths, because, we've got jiu-jitsu and we've got Muay Thai, and they all kind of had their own mindset of how to approach an MMA fight. And a lot of it was left down to us as fighters to actually piece it together, come up with the game plans. And, we coached each other and supported one another. And it does feel a lot like that now, but I think that's more because Jimmy Warled, my head coach in my gym, like we're both very much in the mindset that we're still students and we're still learning. We're just a bit further along down the river than these boys, so we can show them the lessons that we've learned, the mistakes that we've made, and try and give some structure to what MMA is. Because back in when we were fighting, there wasn't really an MMA like a style. Like MMA has really become its own style now. Yeah. And we were still trying to figure out what that style was. I mean, we knew it was going to be some jiu-jitsu and some Muay Thai, and obviously we need some wrestling as well. But things like calf kicks have emerged since I fought, and there's a lot more stance switching going on. The fight IQ of a lot of these guys has improved as well, and that's from guys like us, hanging up the gloves and passing it on to the next generations. These guys are so much better than us. Like I've got 15-year-olds that would have beat me when I was in my 20s just purely because they're so much technically better. It's exciting, it's really exciting. And I hope I'm old enough, I'm around to watch these boys pass on the information and see where MMA is, in the 7th and 8th and 10th waves. It's an amazing thing to be a part of because the speed it's moving.
Yeah. I mean, you're only 39. I mean, I know when your birthday is because I'm a fan. But like, are you having a little bit of like a turning 40 flap? Because I'm waking up at night shitting myself.
I don't know, to be honest. It feels kind of surreal, like we keep having a chat about it at the gym because Jimmy Warled's a couple of years younger than me, but I've also got a couple of friends in the circle that are already 40, 41, 42. What's weird is I remember when my dad turned 40 because he's only 17 years older than me. Like I remember he turned 40 and I thought to myself, that's a dad age, and now I'm turning 40. I actually, honestly, I feel better than I have done in a long time, just because I'm not grinding and beating myself up anymore. I'm getting better rest and I'm being smarter with my training and my diet's better. So I'm still not taking competition off the table. There's a couple of options that I'm considering at the moment. One of them being boxing, but we'll just kind of see where it takes me. I'm just enjoying being in the gym again at the moment.
Also, 40 these days is so different to being 40 even 17 years ago. It's like
but
like
that's because you're nearly 41.
Yeah, shut up. All right, just quit rubbing it in her. I tell myself this on the daily, but it's true, right? Like fucking hell. Yeah, I remember when 40 was just the number you gave to someone fucking old. That's it. Yeah. It's like they're bored. But now with nutrition, supplement, everything like that, it's a different world.
Yeah, and recovery as well. We just focus on combat sports. No one was using cryotherapy when I was coming up. No, I started using a hyperbaric chamber when I was fighting in the UFC, and people thought I was crazy. They didn't understand what I was doing. Now it's a fairly common tool to use. But cryotherapy and dry needling, and how often do you see guys get into fights now with cupping marks on them?
Yeah.
That was not a thing back in the day. No one knew what that was. It's like the recovery and the self-care has become so much better, which obviously in a combat sport you need, because we take a real beating and with us, back in the day we were beating each other up in the gym, and then we were going into fights and beating one another up, and then we take 2 days and eat a load of pizza, and then we're fighting the weekend after, so there was just no recovery. So a lot of the guys in my generation are kind of broken down a bit as well, which I'm thankful for that I'm not. I've been very lucky in that regard, but I have always also been kind of smart with myself as well, and not driven myself too much into the ground, watching other guys do it.
I remember them shootbox boys back in the Pride days, and
not good for you. Not good for you. It's great for us as fans. We love it. We love that stuff.
Exactly.
But not good for the longevity. The thing is, and this is where I think, and I wasn't a huge fan of him, but Joe Calzaghe, I think, got it right by pulling the sparring right back.
Yeah.
Most of the damage is done in the gym. It's most of these guys because they're training tired, and they're training with people that know what they do, so they're able to stop them halfway through. And that's where most of the injuries are picked up. It's either there or not recovering properly after fights. But yeah, I think guys are getting smarter now, and people like Conor McGregor have helped by that play sparring that he was doing with Artem, and now Max Holloway comes out and says that he doesn't spar anymore.
Tony Ferguson saying that, right?
Who's that?
I think
Tony Ferguson, I think, said as well that he
Yeah, like I think you get to a stage where and it's not necessarily that they don't spar. I think they learn how to play.
Yeah.
I think they learn how to train and like play when they're training with their training partners. And
so you watch the kids in Thailand, they're literally like, but just their touch and it's play.
Exactly. And I think we can learn a lot from Muay Thai, especially because, you know, a lot of the people that are coming through Muay Thai, like you look at someone like Rod Tang, who's fighting DJ in a couple of weeks. Like he turned pro at 8. Like, what's your mindset when you're an 8-year-old? You're not a killer when you're 8. You're a child. You want to play. So there's a playful element to the way that they fight, and plus they've got not got the power to really damage one another. So it becomes much more about trickery, about tag, about I can make you do something that you don't want to do, and it's the same. Like when you watch guys like Senchai spar with the younger guys in the gym, like it's playful. Like they're toying with them.
Even his fights are like that, right?
Exactly. And that's how you know someone's a master, when they can play in the heat of a situation. Blackout, another one. You know, really, really playful fighters, really playful style, but it allows them to pick their moments to when they really want to put it on you.
Nice. With the I don't want to say the new styles that have popped up, because obviously bare knuckle of various forms has been around for a while. Like, which ones are the ones that you're into? Are you a BKFC fan? Are you following Dave Ledoux in Lethway and you know, insert any of that? Are you into slap fighting? That's the real question. Because that shit is wild.
It is this is the thing. It's getting more and more difficult to draw the line as to what I am actually interested in. I'm not interested in the slap fighting stuff too much. I'm not interested in numbers of people fighting numbers of people.
Yeah, the pillow fight as well. What the fuck?
Yeah, the pillow fighting is wild.
Yeah, that's weird. That's weird as well. I don't know. I think sometimes people are looking for Instagram likes, and that's kind of influencing our sport too much. I honestly don't mind the bare knuckle stuff. I have no issue with it. My thought is that if it established itself in the mid-90s when MMA did, that it would look very different right now. Because I think what we've got is a bunch of bare knuckle guys that are training boxing and sparring and fighting like they've got, you know, 12-ounce, 10-ounce gloves on, and they haven't. So their defense isn't the same. I mean, anytime you see someone do an impression of an old bare knuckle boxer, they don't stand like a boxer. They stand exactly. You need that long skirmish or that lead hand out there, you know, to meet the oncoming attacks. So I actually think over the next probably 10 years, we're going to see a real evolution in bare knuckle boxing, where it actually starts to develop its own style. You know, they're still trying to apply boxing to bare knuckle, just like we still try and apply boxing to mixed martial arts. And there are differences, you know, difference in stance, difference in weight distribution. And certainly, you know, the defense that you can have with no gloves on, like you have to be far more reliant on that backhand and that head movement.
And tight it too. You don't want to leave any openings, otherwise it goes straight through.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, we learned these things about punching when it came to MMA. You know, you can't double guard in MMA. You can't just cover, because stuff's going to get through you.
4 rounds ain't much it's not much space to take up. Also, too, you were saying with MMA how now it's its own style. I feel like bare knuckle's still at the stage where it's getting not the left, but people that have had a career that are moving to that. So it's not their first thing. And when it's people's first wave is like, I'm going to be a bare knuckle fighter, that's when you get those amazing transformations. Like you see now with the MMA, like it's literally the first thing people are doing, and the skill set is just off the chain.
Yeah, it's a great point. You know, there are guys in the gym that, you know, I can think back in the day that had, you know, a handful of MMA fights and they liked it, but the thing that they loved was the punching, the fighting part of it. Yeah. And I think about these guys now and I'm like, you know, if he'd have had bare knuckle boxing to go into, and he could have, you know, put all his focus into that, he would have probably been a lot more successful at that than he was at his brief career in MMA. There are certainly people that are, you know, they're certainly more cut out for bare knuckle boxing. You know, I was actually having this conversation the other day, because I think a lot of the guys that are drawn to the bare knuckle now are the guys that were drawn to MMA in the early 90s.
Yeah. Yes.
It's the lunatics, it's the crazy guys. That's why Mike Perry took a bat to the way into the press conference and stuff. You know,
sometimes you have to, though. You know,
you never know. Especially
you never know.
You know, he wants to bang. You know, he wants to bang, bro. So you got to be
saying they're just listen. Yeah,
you just got to let him, right?
Yeah, cross some holy water, a bat, maybe a nail. Who knows? Like you just got to do it. You just got to be ready.
You know, and the thing is as well, if you go back to like really old boxing footage, say if you go back and watch some old like Joe Louis fights or something, like his style was very different to modern day boxing.
Yeah,
like you put a Joe Louis style against Lomachenko, and they might be Muay Thai. They might as well be Muay Thai and karate. They're so different, right? And I think that there's a lot of it is down to the change, like the adaptation, the growth of boxing as a style in itself, but also the changing of the gloves as well. You know, a lot of the guys, a lot of the back in the day, you could properly ball your fist up, and it was much more about trying to hurt someone instead of trying to you know, outpoint somebody with speed. Like they would clinch and they would hook and punch, and you know, there was a lot more hanging on the head, and we're getting a bit of this back now. You know, my favorite boxer of all time is Julio Cesar Chavez. Yep. And he had that really kind of push forward bullying style, which I think would have done well in MMA. And same with Golovkin. You know, Golovkin's got a style now which is very kind of front foot heavy, sticks the jab down your throat. You know, he's not nearly as vulnerable to low kicks. His stance isn't as vulnerable to takedowns. Yep. You know, I think there are certain boxers that are closer to an MMA skill set than others. You know, I said Tyson Fury would do well in MMA the other day.
He would.
People laughed at me, but it's not like he wouldn't prepare. Not like he wouldn't take, you know, 6 to 12 months and learn some takedown defense.
And he'd be the sort of person to do it on the sly as well. He'd just be like, because he put up a video.
Just surprise you with it. Yeah, no worries. All of a sudden he's doing head kicks. You're like, how are you a 7-foot man doing head kicks, bruv?
You're not telling me he can't crack you with elbows. I've done a few shows with John Fury, and he's got teeth marks in his forearms and elbows from smacking people. So those skills have definitely transferred down the family tree.
He haunts my nightmares, John Fury. Yeah, I'm sure he's a lovely geezer, but it's just like, you just look at him and you're like, number one, you're massive. Number two, you look even harder than Tyson. And number three, we all know you pulled someone's eyeball out. Do you know how angry you got to be to pull someone's eyeball out?
Yeah,
like that's not a light grievance, is it? It's proper livid.
That's proper angry, that isn't it?
Yeah, that's levels to the game. That
he's a very interesting character. I really got on well with him, and I thoroughly enjoyed working with him. It was kind of odd because they brought me down to London for the, you know, when Tyron was fighting Jake Paul the first time. Yeah, and they brought myself and John Fury and Vidal Riley was there as well, and they had us kind of standing around a boxing ring. But it was quite clear that they brought me down to be the antagonist for John Fury. Right. So, you know, I kind of come ready. I'm like, okay, this guy's going to be trying to trash MMA all the way through. And...
To make you kind of like Team Woodley?
No,
or just Team MMA, which Woodley is the representation of. I see.
Yeah, they did during the Maymac fight as well. You know, for Sky Sports, they had Johnny Nelson and Carl Froch, but they brought me in as the MMA guy, and I was there to like hold the fort on my own. But actually, what happened is, as the show was going on, John and I were agreeing with a lot of stuff. So we ended up really getting on quite well, and then we did a few more shows after that, and I actually sat next to him during the event, and we just got on well. He's an absolute tank. There is no doubt about it. You know, he did a half marathon in Scotland, drove down and did a half marathon in Nottingham, drove down to London and worked all the way through the night while Tommy was fighting on the Jake Paul undercard, and then got in his car and drove back up to Manchester the next morning. I don't know what powers the man, but he's a monster.
He operates with a tight personal policy and the power of prayer. Let me just tell you that straight up. Yeah. Listen, anyone that will look at you dead in the eye and say, I will bet you £720,000, and you go, oh, that's a very specific number. I don't need this. You know what I mean? And it's
that's what he's got in the boot of his car. That's why.
Yeah, exactly. That's what he's got in rings. He's ready to go, bless him. With what you were just saying there, that boxing's moved on so much. So we had like a little bit of a dark, like I have come away from MMA probably 3-4 years ago now, because I think it got too big. It changed a lot. Like there was like a slight barrier for me, which was like, I didn't have Fight Pass. I didn't have BT Sport. And then you kind of just, at some point, like the rise of Instagram, the second it went from 15 seconds to like 5 minutes, you're like, I can pretty much cover everything I need to do to stay ahead. But with MMA's like huge rise, which, you know, you were one of the poster boys for not just really the UK, but Europe really for the UFC. It kind of spurred boxing into a new little bit because I've had to get that act together. And now what we have is kind of like, there's no more feud. It seems like boxing's got its own feuds, MMA's got its own feuds, but everything's come up. And like as a fan, I'm sure you're buzzing about it. We're buzzing about it. And, you know, it's just a good time to be a podcaster in this realm.
It absolutely is. And the good thing is that people across sports are talking about combat sports generally. You know, it's like if you like boxing, then you're probably going to like MMA. And if you like kickboxing, then you definitely like MMA and boxing. Yeah. You know, I think the competitiveness between the sports is only good in the production element. You know, Eddie Hearn was on Ariel's show the other day talking about how he pays attention to Dana and to the way that they produce the UFC events and stuff. You know, there's a lot to be learned from that.
For sure.
And the other thing as well is, I mean, the Amir Khan Kell Brook fight was a huge signifier in the boxing world that you don't need the two best guys in the weight class. They don't need to have belts around their waist. I was more excited for that fight than I am for the majority of fights, including some Canelo fights, because I know that it's going to be a washout. Like, this was one of the few fights that when they stepped in there, I'm like, I don't know, I'm not sure. Like it was an even footing. There was nothing on the line.
Who did you want though? Like, there's not who did you think, but who did you want?
You know, I got into the stage. I actually think they did a really good job with the promotion, because I watched the countdown shows. I mean, of course, you know, Amir Khan has had a more successful career in you know, as far as the record books go, you could say. He's had better options and opportunities. He's also a much better talker, you know, and he absolutely slammed Kell at the face-off with Johnny Nelson. I thought, you know, he looked really good, really comfortable. And then when they did the countdown shows, the what was it called, Behind the Ropes? I thought they through the ropes really well. You know, they both came across really well. I was interested to see, you know, where Amir Khan was at psychologically in his career, and he opened up very, very honestly about that. Kell always carries his heart on his sleeve, so you know where he's at anyway. And they both had as much to lose as they had to gain. The only thing you could say is that it would have been a bit unfair for Khan to win, given the fact that he's always enjoyed the little more success. I didn't want to see something that was tightly contested or controversial, and I didn't want to see a fast knockout. I honestly think it was the best result that we could have got, because it was a great fight. Khan went out on his feet; he wasn't knocked out, and it was decisive.
It was good too for the, like, because it's so easy these days. It's great that combat sports is enjoying a bigger media, but it's so easy to do this. So the amount of shit talk. So it was great that Khan took those big shots and stayed in it. Because, you know, if it had been a quick, fucking Khan was never shit and blah, blah, blah. That was great, I thought. Just about because he ate some massive shots.
He did.
And it was
that roller coaster as well. You know, it's what you want from a fight. It's the moment where you go, oh, wow.
It was tremendous.
What? You know?
It really was.
I
spent 6 rounds giving it this the whole time. Like, I'm just like a massive Kell fan. I was just like, oh my God, what's going on? Because like every time that he would land on him and stiffen him up, there would always be this moment, which is like, is Kell's head okay? Because like we've seen him dominate him before, and then it's just all falling apart. It was a great fight. And Sky, to be fair to them, we've spoken about this a couple of times. They're doing a pretty good job of like vacuuming up talent that probably wouldn't have been seen before. And we've had like a few of them on that are like, they're like, I'm buzzing to have the platform. They're either boxer or Wasserman, and they're just like, I've got the platform. They're backing me. They're throwing everything that they can to make it happen. And it's everything goes up, like we were saying a minute ago. Everything rises.
And that's another great thing too, that MMA, I'm so thankful, has brought into the boxing world, is this fucking, like, the O in boxing since Mayweather was like this sacred ground. And it's like, listen, if you have the best fighting the best, which happens in MMA all the time, no one gets an easy run, right? It's someone's going to lose, like, and deal with it. That's it. It was the best person on the night, necessarily the best person ever, but on that night they did it. They'll do it again, hopefully, or something will happen. MMA, I feel like, really is starting to influence that. The quality of the opponents is going up. People take a loss, they keep a few losses. Who gives a shit? That is, to me, is such a big improvement that's come from the MMA world. You know, like
100%, 100%, because it almost went too. It has gone too far the opposite way now with boxing, where you're watching an undercard, even of you know, the Khan Brook undercard. There were fights on there where you know for sure, like Big Phrase, like he was fighting a dude from the pub, like you knew he was going to win. I can't get that excited because he's not really achieving that much.
Yes.
And then there were 2 brothers on the undercard
the
as well.
Azim brothers, the
Azim brothers. Both of them, they look shit hot, really, really good. But they were both fighting someone that wanted to survive so they could fight the weekend after and make their money.
For sure.
And I'd rather see these guys challenged by guys that are on the same way up as them. You know, like the Khan Brook fight proves a lot, because no one had a belt. There was nothing to lose, like title wise, but everybody tuned in and everybody loved it. And then, you know, like this, the weekend coming up soon with Masvidal against Covington.
Oh, yep.
I said this out loud the other day, and as I heard myself say it, it was almost like a realization. People don't tune in to watch Masvidal to watch him succeed. They watch him. Yeah. They want to watch him fight.
Yes.
That's it. That's it. He's like a hockey enforcer, right? You watch him fight every weekend on the ice to defend his teammates, and you love him win or lose because he's there to fight. Like it's the fighting aspect is what people love. And it was the same with Kell Brook. It's the same with Amir Khan, the fact that he was willing to step up and have a fight. You know, you want to see these guys risking something, putting something on the line, because all of us sitting on the outside are living vicariously through these guys. So we want to see them do something like Jonas on the co-main event. You know, Jonas, sorry. What a great performance. She was taking on a really big fighter who, you know, was quite capable of taking the shots. And the question was, can she carry a weight, a power up?
Third time as well, at third attempt. You know, if she didn't get the title that time, that was amazing.
You want to see them succeed because you know how much they're risking. You know what it means to them. Like that's how you engage the fans.
With your career, I think it's only fair that we talk about that. How did so obviously the UFC went into a big expansion. How did you get hooked up? Was it literally you were a name in Cage Rage and it was like the dude with the mohawk in red with the wolf teeth? Yeah, get him in.
I mean, it was a bit of an odd one, to be honest, because there were a few guys signed before me, and I knew when the first time the UFC kind of came sniffing around, I wasn't ready. I think my record was maybe 10-3, and I signed when I was 19-6. I knew early on I wasn't ready, and I knew that it was going to be a couple of 3 losses because I wasn't prepared, and then I'd be out and back to Cage Warriors or whatever. And I didn't want to do that, so I kind of hung on. But once I'd gotten 20, 22 fights in, I was ready again for the call. And then there were a few guys that got signed around me, you know, guys that I'd seen on the scene, like, you know, Paul Taylor, Paul Kelly, you know, Jess Leodon, Jason Tan got signed.
That's Ian's friend is Jess.
I mean, you know, great guys, but I very much felt like I was in amongst them, and I should have been, you know, signed. So when I was signed, that's part of the reason why I chose the walkout England belongs to me. Because I want to make sure that all the boys in the weight class know that I've arrived. And then I wanted to make waves very quickly. So that's why Marcus Davis was an obvious one to go after.
Perfect.
Because he'd already beaten off the guys that I'd already mentioned. So I thought if I can topple that guy, then that immediately puts me at the top of the pack in the UK. But I mean, it's crazy to think about it. You know, I made my debut on UFC 89. I was the first fight on the main card, I think.
You had Gono as your debut, didn't you? You fought Gono as your debut, was it?
Yeah. And that was the other thing as well, because I was watching all of these guys get signed and then get matched up against one another. And I'm like, oh, it's just like fighting on Cage Warriors or Cage Rage or whatever. Like these guys are fighting against one another on the big stage. And then I get a Pride veteran who's got a win over Mastasi and Hector Lombard. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I also knew he was going to be a spoiler as well, because that's how Gono fights. He's a pain. But then, you know, I went from that. That was a split decision, which I really didn't like. I wanted it to be far more decisive. But then I got co-main event in London in my next fight. You know, so it was almost like my waiting and being patient had paid off, because now all of a sudden I was right back at the top, you know, of the weight class within the UFC again.
That was the 02, yeah.
That was the 02, yeah.
It's the one and only UFC that I've attended. I had a fantastic time. Your after fight interview is one of my favorites of all times, which is a very simple. I got punched. Like nothing. I got punched in the face, Joe. Like simple as job done. I will never ever forget. So we were sitting very, very cage side, and on the other side there was like Robert Downey Jr., Jude Law, and Guy Ritchie, and that fucker shot up so fast. The O2 went deathly silent, and then you just saw Guy go. Pulled him down, and then it's a good event.
I don't hold it against him. I enjoyed Sherlock Holmes and Iron Man, so I'll let it slide this time. What was funny is a couple of weeks after that, I got a message from Jeremy Piven, and he was like, "Hey, I'm living in London now. I want you to train me to fight Robert Downey Jr." I'm like, "Brilliant, sign me up."
I'm in. Was this the point where Piven's hair started to mysteriously grow back, and was he acknowledging it or not? Because he doesn't acknowledge it at all. And like,
oh, is that right? Does he not?
Doesn't. Yeah, you're just like, bro, you started Entourage and you had hair like mine. And now you've got a full thatch. And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about, pal.
Mate, it's happening all the time at the moment. I constantly see these photos popping up, guys going out to Turkey and getting those lines drawn on their head. And they get,
the Eubank Juniors. Yeah, the Eubank Juniors. Yeah. My wife won't let me do it. She'll go mad if I do it.
Yeah, don't do it,
I know, but I'll get designs. It'll be like 92 all over again. It'll be powerful. I might get a tick.
There you go. Yeah. Get some like tribal shapes on. Yeah, there you go.
I don't want to get the tribal shapes because that's a little bit too retro. You know what I mean?
It's very nice.
Yeah, I'm trying to keep the level quite high and the class heavy. You know what I mean? Like tribes. It's very Aussie, I'm afraid, isn't it? Tribal.
Hey.
Yeah. So from your that era of the career, social media wasn't that big. Like Facebook was lurking around. You didn't really have to deal with that much of what the boys have to do now, but yet you still did a fucking good job of being known, seen, and also seen to the point where the UFC would present you. So to your fighters now, are you giving them seminars on like marketing and self-branding and like, look, yes, I know you lot now have it in your hand where you can do it. Daddy didn't have that, but
most of them are still not quite grasping the concept that a part of their job is building a brand that is sellable. You know, a lot of these guys, and I love them for it, but they're purists. They want to live in a basement and think about nothing but fighting and come to the gym, and they don't want to pick up their phone. And you know, it's something that's really, really valuable, really worthwhile. Yeah. And for any fighter that signs with an organization, you need to make sure that organization is doing what they can to promote you. You know, the UFC is a promotion. I mean, the key is in the word. It's their job to promote you. Like every time the UFC called or emailed with an interview or whatever, I would do it. I would always do it. And yeah, we didn't really have social media back in the day. I mean, I had a MySpace, which was, you know, fairly busy, and then Facebook.
Shout out Tom.
You know, the thing that kept it going were the forums. That was the thing that kept it live.
Bodog and yeah.
Well, we had Cage Warriors in the UK, and that was for me the fulcrum of the whole UK MMA scene, because that was where matches were made. That was where trash talking was going on. You know, that it was kind of where you found everything as far as training partners and fights and you know, people's records, videos of stuff that you were looking for. It was a really cool space, but it gave the community a place. I would literally, like, I get up in the morning now, I check Instagram and Twitter, and I check YouTube for my news updates, and I check my email. I would do email and Cage Warriors forum. That's how important it was, you know? It was the place that everybody went to and all knowledge was shared. So just like when you open up your Instagram feed now, that's what the Cage Warriors forum was. And you knew all the characters and you'd see them at the shows at the weekends. It was cool, and I've got a lot to be grateful for with those guys, because they were the ones that really pushed the Marcus Davis stuff out into the international forums. You know, it's so important to build a brand now, though, if you're an athlete.
I mean, we've had this a few times with guests on here that aren't the most known, but they are like funny and they're good personalities. They're just, again, like you said, the purest element, which is, to be fair, Ian is a very much so a purist kind of guy. But like my suggestion is always like, you can get a grad who's a fan. Like, it's not that hard to find a fight fan that maybe is also a film grad, and just say, look, you can have all the credit in the world. You do what you want with it. Film in my own 24/7. Like, if you can afford them to give a little bit something, but some fighters can't. And I get that. I would have done it for free. I would have been all about that life.
Right.
You know what I mean? If you can't do it, at least be around the ones that can and be like, thank you for doing the podcast, Dan.
Yeah, I've got two guys. I've got my Raptors, and they are guys. I mean, I literally met them. They came into the gym, and they're like, we love MMA. We're sick of shooting weddings and adverts for you know, clothing companies. We want to be around MMA. So now they basically follow the team around. We've got the Rough House Uncensored on the YouTube channel, so you can kind of get an insight into the gym. But the good thing is, I mean, they produce a lot of content for the guys to make it just easier for them to share. But the best thing usually is like these boys. I always say, look, mate, your girlfriend posts 10 times a day. Have her post 9 and post 1 for you. You know, even if you're doing duck lips, I don't care. Just get photos out there so people can plug into your journey, right? Like, that's why the Khan Brook thing was so interesting for me, because I was on board because I watched the stories of the two guys. You know, I was invested, and I wanted to know the outcome. Like, you need to get them invested when you're an amateur. and keep them on board all the way through. You know, guys like Mohamed Mokaev, who's just signed with the UFC. You know, he had a huge following all the way through IMAF. You know, amateur to then signing with Brave CF, then to signing with the UFC. It gives you market value. When he steps onto that UFC roster, he's as valuable as his social media following. And we know how big those can grow sometimes. You know, you've got Islam Makhachev, who's got a couple of million followers. His fight is absolutely buzzing. It doesn't matter that he's got a different opponent. It's a massive benefit if you can market yourself.
But what would be like if you're going to give one of your fighters 3 things and say, look, you've got all the talent in the world, you can 100% win a strap, right? You need to let people see this, and this. What are these things? Are you saying like classic training videos, sitting at home with the missus, like I'm walking the dog, or are you just letting them into life, or are you keeping it exclusively training and just doing it that way?
No, I think people want to relate. So, I mean, what I'd be saying to these guys is I'd say, you know, I'd say show people how much you love it. Like show them your passion. Show how much it means to you. If you have a rough training session, you can say you had a rough training session. If you lose a fight, you can show emotion because it sucks. We hate losing. Like, you don't want to see someone that doesn't care, because then how are you going to care if they don't care about their own career? Right? Yeah. Like a little bit heart on the sleeve, you know, like we all feel for Kell Brook. We all felt for Amir Khan. You know, they're good guys at putting themselves out there. Sometimes guys are just a bit quiet, you know, like Gunnar Nelson, right? Is a fascinating individual. I could sit and talk to him for hours and hours, but you put a microphone in front of his face and he's like, well, you know, I don't really want to, just like choking people out. And you're like, I want to get on board. Like, give me something. Give me, you know, like let me in. You know, that's kind of what I say. You know, let people know how much it means to you and how much you invest your time and your energy into it. Show them how quickly you're improving, and you know, keep them updated. Just been to the gym, feeling great. You know, rough sparring session today. Such and such really put it on me. Couple of weeks left for the fight. My weight's a bit heavy, but I'm working on it. I'm cutting my carbs today. You know, take people on that journey. It's the Big Brother thing. It's the reality TV demographic in our environment, you know?
I think it's like what you were saying, Rob, with kind of when you fell out with the MMA, that also thing that happened too was the amount of events went up drastically. So you kind of lose the storyline. Like before, you know, you'd be waiting for this, like the fights, you know, you're literally counting down. Now it's like, you know, every weekend there's a new fight. It's kind of, some are massive, some are whatever. But that's kind of where you need to stand. As much as like, I'm not a massive fan of like the extracurricular shit, you know, I'm like, you know, keep it to the fighting. Like at the end of the day, it has to be about that. You know, you can do whatever, but it's got to be about the fight. You need to stand out now, because otherwise, like Gunnar, it's such an incredible fighter, but your everyday fan probably won't know his name. You know, we had Artur Beterbiev on last night, and your everyday fan won't know him, and he's like a terrifying dude that knocks out every person he's ever fought. It's a shame, because it's the same sort of thing. It's like, no, I talk, just let people in. My missus will watch fights because I make her, but when they do the all access or the behind the scenes,
it doesn't sound great in this time, mate. You can't be.
Sorry, she chooses an equality. Yeah, but you know what I mean, right? Like, I'll put it on, she'll watch, but she's invested if she's seen that, like you said, the training camps, what goes into it, what it means to them, anything with their kids. She's like, oh, I want him to win. It's like,
because you can relate to them, because they're not this crazy, you know, cage fighter that's stepping in there and fighting for blood and glory. They're real people that have got family that, you know, are concerned about them, and they've got kids that they're fighting for to give them better opportunities in life. Like these are things that we can all relate to. Not everyone can relate to the idea of wanting to get into a fist fight. That is quite alien for everybody. So if you do just focus on, you know, this is what I do, I love, you know, like, you're always going to run aground with a big portion of the fans. But if you can open up, if you can, I mean, again, being yourself, because I think there's something quite repellent about people putting on a performance. And I think this is where Colby's kind of found himself right now, because although Masvidal does have a character, people love that character because it's genuine. Like he's a gangster. Like if you slapped him in the face on the street, you better watch your back, because the MMA mate's going to give you a kicking. Whereas if
it's the little bits he does, it's like the hands behind the back to let you know that there's no intent with the hands. It's those little bits where you're like,
what did he say? He was going to slap him up in Whole Foods or something as well.
Yeah.
It was like,
that's it. But you know, I was sitting in the lock. I mean, I was a few meters away from Masvidal when he threw that 3-piece and a soda at Liam. I was literally like, you know, it was a few meters away from me. And I was also sitting in the reception when Fabricio Verdum attacked Colby Covington with a boomerang in Australia. Like, but the reactions were so different. I mean, like, this is the thing. Like, Colby had made his bed, but he wasn't prepared to lay in it. If you throw a boomerang at Masvidal, he's throwing something back. But Colby was lawsuits and security and...
Yeah, you can't be doing that. It makes you immediately look like an absolute cabbage. Yeah, you can't...
It's just not believable. So then all of a sudden people are like, I now can't invest in you because I don't buy it. You know, I do think there is something about being genuine. And I think, like, my character was never really a character. It was always... It's like that person you see fighting in the UFC that's 30 or 40% of who I am anyway. I just crank the volume up to 11. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Your entrances when Buffer's announcing your name, like, you cannot be not hyped at that shit. You just it was amazing.
But that's the thing. Like, you enjoyed that, and other people enjoyed it because I was enjoying it, and you knew I was enjoying it because you could see it on my face. Like, if I saw Bruce Buffer today, he would still mention that every time. He was like, "You were the first one to do it. I used to love it. It used to get me fired up." You know, but it's genuine because I used to sit and play UFC video games and imagine Bruce Buffer calling my name.
You could tell because you're smiling at the weigh-ins. You're like this, you're like, that geezer loves his job.
Yeah. It's wartime. Yeah. It's fun time now. The hard bit's done. This is the fun bit. But no, what you're saying there, like, the authenticity is the key. It's like, it's the rise of even like this as a medium. Like, you know, like, what other world would we have a chance to sit down and chat with you for an hour? Unless it's in, like, we're not doing it on like ham radios, are we? Speaking of, what do you make of not so young anymore, but still quite young, Chris Eubank Jr.? Because you've touched on a few things that are like him. Like, he is talented, but there's something inauthentic and quite hard to bond with. And every now and again he comes through, and then, like, this weekend on the Sky Card, he's just like grabbed a mic, standing in front of Froch, mugs Froch off big time, which is always hilarious because, like,
he hates it.
He hates it. He really does. And the thing is as well, is like, Froch is still Froch. Even now, like at 44, whatever he is, he's still Froch, and he's still a big fucker, that geezer. Junior just doesn't care. And then the second that Junior stops talking about Junior, he turns his back and they carry on that nothing happened. And it's just like, it was immense. But then, like, that also translates in his last performance. Like, he does everything except for stop his opponent, but still manages to not have anyone really like him, but looks the best he's ever done. And it's like, what's going on?
It's an odd one, isn't it? I mean, there are a few fighters like that, and I just think to myself, like, why is there not a massive fanfare around these guys? And I always think people struggle when they're in the shadow of somebody else. You know, like, how can you not be how could he not be in the shadow of his father? And an incredibly eccentric individual who was an incredible boxer in his own right. You know, you're always going to kind of be in the shadow and maybe a little bit struggling to find who you are in that shadow. Like, it happens often. I mean, we saw it with was it Sean Taylor that a few weeks ago he was pulled out of a fight by his father. And
Sean Porter.
Sean Porter. Yeah.
And then when they went to the corner, his dad was like, "Yeah, well, I knew he'd not prepared properly and stuff." I'm like,
"It's your job to prepare him, guy." Yeah.
Again,
it's your job to prepare him. Like, what are you mugging him off for?
Also, that's a private conversation. That's not a area, especially too when that turned out to be his last fight. It's like, man, come on. Because he fought his heart out too. Like, that was an incredible performance.
Yeah,
he mugged him off proper. That was not cool.
Like, I think sometimes people just naturally cast a big shadow. Like, I think Chris Eubank is that person for his son. And I think anytime you see him at a press conference or away, and he's always there up front with his satchel in his hand. You know what I mean?
Sleeveless 3-piece. G moves.
I remember his debut where he was literally in the corner. It's like, bro, you're not even in his corner. Like, what are you doing? He just stood center stage. It's like, you've had your time and you did amazing. Let him have a go now. Come on.
And then you know, you've got Chris Eubank and his son, and then you've got Nigel Benn, and his approach is entirely different. Like him sitting ringside when his son knocked out his last opponent and watching that happen was that I was engaged in that. I wanted to be in that corner with them because I could see how much it meant to him. Yeah. But at the same time, he's like, this is, he could go be a boxer. Yep. I'm not a part of this anymore. I don't want to influence that anymore. It's interesting how their sons are in different positions. They're very different characters who were in very different positions when they were competing as well. And one of the guy that comes to mind, because this is the opposite, is Naoya Inoue, and his father Shingo doesn't want camera time, doesn't want attention. It's all about refining his son's skill set.
Lomachenko's dad's a lot like that too. Lomachenko's dad is always
there. You go. Yeah. I don't know. I think you can either be blessed or cursed by the person that you precede in your family in combat sports. Yeah. Tommy Fury, another good one. He's never ever going to be Tyson Fury. I feel bad for him. Yeah. You know, like it's a good thing he didn't take that Jake Paul fight because it would have been very competitive. And if he'd have lost, he wouldn't have been a Fury anymore. You know,
that's like people hate, but honestly, hate to admit it, but he is a lot closer to Jake than he is to Tyson. Like if you compare him, like he had his success from Love. And the thing is, like Tyson is a boxer, and you know, he's learning, but that like you said, that would have been a competitive fight, I think. And
and not competitive in a way that people would want it to be either. Competitive in a way where, hang on a minute, this is not a good look for Tommy Fury at all. Because even if he'd have won and it'd have been close, it wouldn't have been a good look. And the pressure on him from his family as well. I remember John off camera, they edited this out of the final show because they were saying, so what about if Tommy fights Jake Paul and loses? And he just said stone cold, I'd beat him with a bike chain. I'm like,
I mean, listen. Sometimes that's the level of discipline we have to roll at. And if the one time that you get beaten with a bike chain by your dad is when you take a beating from Jake Paul, it's like, all right, maybe it should be on the shelf. Maybe it should always be above us at all times, even at our ages now.
But, you know, the thing is, it's what that pressure does to Tommy going into the fight. It doesn't allow him to express himself as the best version of himself because he's already got that pressure, the pressure of disownment from his family.
Yeah, and bike chains.
And the thing is, Tommy was never trained as a boxer. Like Tommy was the kid in the gym that was clearing up after the boxers, and he stayed in the gym and was persistent, which is why his dad started to let him spar. But John Fury's never had the belief that Tommy was a boxer. He trained Tyson to be a prize fighter, but he raised Tommy to be something else. So you know, it's a really difficult position for him to be, and a lose-lose in a lot of ways.
How did you feel about the madness of people saying that the last Woodley Paul fight, the hand gesture was like a signal? Like, is that just something you look at that and you just go, "Thank fuck, it's nothing to do with me"?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, it's like, first of all, no one gets knocked out and face plants on purpose, right?
No.
You can't do it. Like I always think back to the Only Fools and Horses scene where Del Boy falls through the bar.
Yeah.
Like, the reason why that's so memorable is because he doesn't flinch and try and brace himself when he hits the floor. If you're conscious, you can't fall face first like Tyron Woodley did. Second of all, why would he let Jake Paul knock him out? Not for any amount of money. I don't think Tyron Woodley would allow that.
Not.
But the thing is, and I don't know whether people fully understand what happened, but Tyron, as we know, has got a habit of guarding high with one hand and reaching down with the other, right? He does it up against the fence with Wonderboy constantly in their fight, right? It's defend one or defend one. And if you watch, Tommy goes to the body and he sweeps it away with his right hand and guards high with his left. And then Tommy feints and he goes the opposite way, catches him straight
drops it over. Yeah.
It was just a nice little feint from Tommy Fury. And it was, the fact that people are saying it was a fix is underestimating the fact that Jake Paul's got some basic boxing skills and he caught him. It's crazy.
I mean, he's got tens of millions. He can reach out and have the best possible coaching. And if he's disciplined, look, he seems to be, if he seems dedicated like he seems to be, he's not just going to be there letting pros just say, "Oh, you're amazing." Like, it seems like he is taking it quite seriously, which is quite scary. And we have a bet that if he wins a world title, we're both getting "It's every day, bro" in hot girl italics on our ribs. No, 100%.
I had to wear his t-shirt on an episode and that was bad enough.
JP's the greatest. You know what I mean? On our Patreon, the highest tier is that you get to be the intro to our intro. And that's the Jake Paul tier, because that's the baller move, right? No. If you're going to pay to be part of the show for 5 episodes, that's JP shit right there. Why boxing for you to come back with? Would you not fancy like a roll around? Like you want full force, all in?
I mean, to be honest, I've not. The only thing I'm putting to the back of the line is anything with bare knuckle. I was offered, so I've been offered a few things. Obviously, the John Wayne Parr fight in Muay Thai would have been ideal, but now he's matched up with Edward Folayang for his 100th win. I'm a bit disappointed in that, to be honest, because you know, it would have been an honor to fight John Wayne Parr. But the truth is, I want the odds stacked against me, because I don't want to put myself in a situation where, you know, where I'm fighting someone that I should beat. Like I want to be facing someone that's definitely supposed to beat me. Like if it's grappling, I want Damian Maia. If it's Muay Thai, I want Blackout. If I'm boxing, I want a boxer. You know, I want someone that I know. I don't want to be trying to explain to the person who I'm the name of the person I'm fighting. I want it to be a clear cut. This is the person. Everyone goes. You know, I like that look of fear in people's eyes, because I don't feel it. You know, I like to see it in other people.
That's why Ron loves the Outlaw, man. We can't wait to have you back. Come on.
like if I say to someone, "Oh yeah, I'm taking a fight against John Wayne Parr," like most people will look at me and go, "Why? You're crazy. Why would you do that? He's had 100 and something Muay Thai fights." I'm like, "That's why.
That's why.
That reaction I get from you. It's like why would you do that?
Samurai, honorable death. Yeah. That's what it's about.
Noble blood, isn't it?
It's a good way of taking the pressure off you, I think. You know, if you're fighting someone that you're supposed to beat, like when GSP's fighting Matt Serra, it's such a far way to fall. You know, when Amir Khan lost by knockout, people were writing him off for the rest of his career. You know, you have to kind of rebuild. There's no rebuilding if you're supposed to lose. Like you're already in that position, so anything you do on top of that's a bonus.
Sorry, I know you probably discussed this a billion times, but since his name came up, there's a will to win. And there's you getting out of that fucking armbar. Like, how? I could not watch that enough times and just be like, oh my God, like, how?
I don't know. It was a mindset. There was no way that anything was going to happen to my arm that was going to make me want out of the fight. You know, like the worst case scenario, like Tim Sylvia, is they break my arm and the referee sees it and stops it, because in my eyes, if I can continue, I've still got 7 other weapons I can attack you with. You know, I don't know. I think some people just have that preset. My preset is, you know, you go 1 and I'll go 2. You go 2 and I'll go 4. You go 4 and I'll go 8. You know, and I'm always going to try and one up you every time.
That was.
And I wasn't as good as GSP. You know, that's the reality of it. He's a better fighter than me, and I learned so much in that fight. But what I did want to show is that no matter what, I wasn't going to quit. You know, like everybody was writing me off. Like I was one of the biggest underdogs that's ever been in a world title fight for the UFC.
Really?
I think at the time I may have been the biggest underdog that's ever stepped into a title fight. And everyone thought I was going to get subbed in the first round. So in that moment where I escaped the armbar, I couldn't help but enjoy the moment. I should have attacked him. But you can watch it again. You'll see me stand up with a grin on my face, because I can see his face going, oh, hang on a minute, that wasn't supposed to happen.
That scarred him. He went back and he was asking, what the fuck happened?
He went back. He went, what did I do wrong? And he's going down on the floor immediately and he's practicing it. And it's just like, he's just like, you did nothing wrong. His arm didn't break and he didn't tap.
There was just a bit of movement in there. There was a bit of movement. I think, honestly, if his arm bar was as tight as Ronda Rousey, he would have stabbed my arm. But there was just enough movement in there to keep my elbow moving, so he wasn't able to lock it in to hyperextend it. Plus, I have really awkwardly stiff elbows and really flexible shoulders, which works as well.
That and in Pride, Sakuraba, when he fought Gracie, where he didn't, and it just. Those to me are just like that is mindset shit. Yeah. Like very few people can go there, and so respect.
Thank you. It's a bit of stupidity mixed in there. Don't be too impressed.
Do you speak? Because you came quite friendly afterwards. I don't know if you became pals, but you became quite friendly after, no?
Yeah. I trained with him a few times. I wouldn't. I mean, if I reached out to him now, we'd have a back and forth. But we're doing our own things. I always had a lot of respect for George, not only as the martial artist that he was and as the competitor that he was, and what he put me through in 25 minutes. But also after that fight was over, when he was preparing for Nick Diaz and Carlos Condit, he brought me up to Montreal to train with me. And honestly, like my first couple of days there, I thought to myself, right, they've brought me up here so he can armbar me a bunch of times and kind of exercise that demon and then fly me back home. But he was like, I was watching the fights at his house. You know, he did my laundry for me while I was up there. We were hanging out. He's just a nice guy, really nice guy. Taught me a lot, shared a lot of information with me, asked me a lot of questions about stuff as well. You know, he's
currently the greatest welterweight.
Absolutely.
Like maybe Usman can edge him out later, but it's GSP. Now, his one main strike for me was that COVID Barnett that he had for a bit. That he sorted it out now, but that
looks a bit like a little bit vintage. Remember Ice Gems back in the day, the little biscuit with the
that or Doug Funny's missus. Do you remember her, Patty? Do you remember Doug? He kind of had that vibe about it, didn't it? It was like unnecessarily wavy and very blonde. Like I was sitting there going, "Has he had plugs? This is not great." Yeah.
No, mate, he's had a full head of hair all along, and he just kept it from us. How about that? Yeah,
it's like him. He does the same.
I look ridiculous with hair.
Not going to keep you any longer, mate. This was an absolute pleasure, mate, and an honor. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Great talking to you. You both got a fantastic set as well. I love all those stuff you've got.
Yeah, mate. My wife's okay with the black wall in the living room, but she'd prefer not to have it here. Yeah. Patreon.com. Maybe get us a studio. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there you go. Get on the Patreon of these boys and let's get them set up.
Yeah. Thank you so much, boss.
Thank you, guys. Great talking to you.
Mate. Take care. Bye-bye.